Hey, welcome back! In the last lesson we managed to insert some records into our database. In this lesson we are going to create our login form so the users will be able to log in. But before going further, I'd like to show you another way of passing a variable to a view. I'm going to replace the with function with compact. The compact function will accept one parameter. In this case will be books. For the compact function to work, we need to have a variable declared that has the same name as the function's parameter. In this case, this will be the books variable. The compact function will pass the variable along with its name declared in parentheses. So if I refresh the browser page, this will work as expected. Now let's start creating our login page. First, I will create this page by using a layout. But what are these layouts? When programming, you find yourself duplicating code quite a lot. This is a bad programming practice. But let's get back to our case. Every HTML page has common elements for your web application. The header, navigation, and footer could be some great examples. In order to avoid duplicating the code, Laravel uses layouts. A layout contains common code that can be reused in multiple pages. To create a layout, I'll start by making a new folder inside my Views folder. I'll name this folder Layout. This will hold all my layout files. Next, inside this folder, I will create a new file, one that will save it as main.blade.php. Then I'll just copy and paste some HTML code into this file. This looks like a regular HTML code. However, it will take advantage of the Blade templating. For example, on line 6, we import the Bootstrap CSS file. Bootstrap is an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript framework that is used to quickly develop web applications. We'll use some Bootstrap CSS classes along the way. Next, on line 31, there's an yield statement. This will actually be replaced with the content that we will provide later. On line 35, we used the link to route statement to include a link to the login page of our web application. Same on line 36, where we include one to our sign up or register page. On line 44, there's another yield statement called content. And we end the layout by including the Cloudflare and Bootstrap JavaScript files. Now that our layout is created, let's see how we can use it. I'll start by creating a new route in the routes.php file, one that will deal with the requests to our login page. Again, I will use the get function to access the login URL. We'll set its alias as login, and the route will use our user controller class as a controller. Now, there will be two requests to this controller, which will deal with the login page. One will use get as a method and another one will use post. The one that will use get will simply display our form to let users log in. The post request will validate the user input and will actually perform the login action. Now back to our route, I use the get request this time, so we'll use a function called getLogin as a response to this request. While we are here, I will create another route for the registration page. Same as the previous one, the route will use the get method in response to the register URL. We'll give this route the register alias and we'll use the user controller class along with a function called getRegister. So far so good. Let's declare these two functions in our controller class. So back to usercontroller.php, we'll first declare a public function called getLogin and then another one called getRegister, both accepting no parameters. Now it's time to put our previously declared layout to work. Let's start with our home page. Switching to home.blade.php, I will get rid of the HTML code so the file will only contain our for each statement. Next, I'll add a new line at the beginning of the file. I will type @extends, and what this will do, it will actually include our layout file that we saved earlier. The extend statement takes one argument, the name of the layout that we want to include or extend. In this case, I type layout.main, as will include the main.blade.php file located in the layout folder. We could also use the / character instead of the dot notation, but I'll keep the dot as this will make it look more like an object-oriented approach. However, both versions are accepted. Then we start declaring a section. This will also take one parameter, the name of the yield statement used in the layout file. In other words, that yield line or statement will be replaced by the content of our section block. So I will use books this time as I want to display our books. However, there is another yield that we can use called content. Each section ends with an @stop statement, so I'll put that at the end of my file. Now let's refresh our homepage and we get to see the login and sign up links, but no books. Let's open up the main layout file. As we can see on line 30, we check if the current user is authenticated. Then we display the books. The authentication mechanism does not work yet as we didn't implement it. So if we remove the yield statement from line 31 before the authentication check line, then we'll be able to display our books. Let's do that and then refresh the page. And this time we get to see the books displayed, although not styled, followed by our login and sign up links. Great! Now let's move the yield statement back after the out check line. Let's start creating our login view. I'll create a new file inside the views folder and we'll save it as login.blade.php. I'll repeat the step for another file that we will save it as register.blade.php. Back to our controller, inside the getLogin function, we'll return the login view by using return view ;make and passing login as an argument. We'll do the same for the getRegister function, but this time passing register as a parameter. Let's start adding some code to our login view. Opening login.blade.php, I'll start with @extends, as this will extend our main layout. Next we'll declare our section that will replace our content and we'll end the section with @stop statement. I will copy these lines and we'll paste them into the register.blade.php file, as this view will also extend our main layout. By accessing the login page of our app, we now receive a page containing our login and sign up links. We get the same content for the register page. Back to our login.blade.php, let's add the actual form that will let us log in. But before doing that, I will add some divs that will use Bootstrap CSS classes in order to make our form look nice. Next we'll add the actual form. Of course, we can use HTML elements as we did so far, but Laravel provides us some HTML form helpers. I'll start by opening and closing double curly braces, as this is a Blade template file. Next, I'll use the form class of Laravel along with its static functions to create our form elements. First, I'll type form label. As you guessed it, this will create an HTML label element. We'll pass the name of the field that our label will represent, in this case username, along with an actual text for this label. This will be again username. In the next line, we will actually create our username input field by using the form text function along with a name for the field and an array containing the CSS class that we want to assign to this field. Again, this is a Bootstrap class. Let's refresh our login page and see the result. Oops, array to string conversion error. Back to our editor, and that's right, the array has to be part of the text function parameter list. We also included null for the default value that this field will take. Let's refresh our page one more time, and this time it worked. We are going to repeat this step for the other form elements. We'll continue with our email field. First, we declare a label for the field by using the form label function, and then the actual field, which will be created using the form text function. Wait, we don't need an email field as this will be our login form and not our registration one. So I'll change this email label and field into a password one. We replace the form text function with a call to form password, and we'll remove the default field value as this will not be available for a password field. Back to our browser, let's refresh the page and the password field is displayed. Now we only need one button to submit this form. For this, I will use the form submit function, which will take an argument as the text for the button and again a CSS class, which will be a bootstrap class. Let's refresh the page and our form looks nice and shiny. There's one more thing to add to the form before making it complete functional. In Laravel, we start declaring a form by using the form open function. So before our first form element, I will put the form open method call. I will pass an array containing the URL that the form is submitting to. First, let's create the route for this URL. Back to our routes file, I will copy the route for the get login page and will duplicate it by changing the get with post in this case. Our form will use the same login view to process the form data, but we'll use a post method for that. I'll do the same for the register route as we will use this to register new users. Also, we'll replace get with post as we will use a post request to submit the register form. Now we can use the login post as our URL for the login form, and we'll also specify the method that we want to use for the form submission, which is post. And we end the form with a form close function call. I will put this line of code after the last form element, in our case the submit button. Back to our browser, let's try to submit the form. Oops, I get a not found HTTP exception because I tried to submit the form by using the alias of the post login page, where I have to use the URL in this case, which is /login. Let's submit the form one more time, and this time we get a bad method call exception, telling us that the method post_login does not exist. That's correct because we didn't declare this method in our controller yet. Well, now it's the perfect time to do this, so I'll open the usercontroller.php file and we'll add a new public function called post_login, which takes no arguments, and will do the same for post_register. Now, what are these functions going to implement? In our login function, we'll grab our data from the user and we'll validate it. The validation process consists in applying some rules to the user input. Then we attempt to login the user by checking its credentials. What we will do in the case of the registration form. Again, we validate the user input and then we attempt to register the user. To conclude, in this lesson we discussed about the creation of our login form. We saw how we can use layouts to avoid code duplication and how our views are including or extending these layouts. Next, we saw how to use Laravel's HTML form helpers to create HTML form elements. In the next lesson, we are going to discuss about implementing the login process in our web app, so stay tuned because we'll be right back. Thanks for watching.